Hello, today is December 6th, 2023. I'm meeting today with Mr. Joe Andujo in Fort Collins, Colorado. My name is Brad Hoops. I'm the interviewer for the Northern Colorado Veterans History Project. Welcome, Joe, and thanks for sitting down today to tell your story.
Thank you. I appreciate you letting me tell my story.
Very good. Let's start out, if we could. Tell us a little bit about yourself, your date of birth, where you were born, a little bit about your family.
Sure. So I was born on April 13th, 1966. I was born in Chihauhua, Mexico. And my parents came here when I was 9 in 1976. And I grew up in western Colorado.
How was that? I've always been fascinated by people that migrate. How was that adjustment for you, your family, and for you?
Sure. So it was a big adjustment, not speaking the language and going to school, with kids who all spoke English and being the only one. So it was myself and my two sisters. We didn't speak any English. And so, and actually my youngest brother, he was 5, but I don't remember if he was in school then yet. It was quite an adjustment, we came from very humble beginnings. I mean, we were very poor. Here, even some of the poorest people, are considered to be middle class in other countries. Sorry. I don't have too many memories of my life before coming here, but I do have a lot of memories of when we came here. Learning English, we were kind of immersed. We were in the classroom with other kids, but there was time set aside to learn English. And as the year progressed, by the time we left, I was in 3rd grade, if I remember correctly. By the time we left 3rd grade, we had moved to another part of town and started, for my oldest sister, she's younger, a year younger than me, but she's the oldest of the two. We were in the same grade. I guess when I was in 3rd grade, I ditched school a lot in Mexico, and so I got held back. So my younger sister and I ended up graduating in the same year. Everybody thought we were twins, but we're not. I'm a year older.
Okay.
When we went to 4th grade, it was just, we were in a regular classroom and, it was a little bit tough because, there's a lot of concepts, a lot of things, a lot of, English is a very difficult language. And so there were a lot of things that I think we kind of struggled a little bit, but being immersed in the language was definitely helpful in getting us to where we were proficient in English. And I have some people say they detect somewhat of an accent. I don't know that I have an accent, but some people say that they can detect it. So, my dad, I remember we lived very close to where my dad worked. It was a sawmill. That was the first job that he had after we moved here. And I remember going to the sawmill, and this is back in 76, so there weren't a lot of OSHA regulations back then. I used to go climb up on the big stacks of logs, and I would go to work with him in the summertime sometimes, and spend half a day or more with him. And the school and the sawmill were within walking distance of our house. So my younger brother and I, we used to go all over the place.
Wow. Wow. And then went through the school system. What town were you guys living in?
So we lived in several towns. We started out in Montrose. Then my dad got, I think the following year had gotten a job working at a precious metals mine in Ouray, Colorado. And the reason that he no longer, that he left that job was that they had drilled too close to a lake that was up on the mountain, in a valley in the mountain. and the lake flooded the mine one day. It was on a Sunday and there was nobody working, so it kind of they had to close the mine down. And then so from there, my dad got a job at as a cattle a ranch hand in a cattle ranch in Olathe. So we moved to Olathe, and then from there, my dad got a job at a coal mine in Somerset, Colorado, and so we moved to Hotchkiss, and that's where my sister and I finished high school. My junior year, my dad, they laid everybody off at the mine, or a bunch of people off at the mine. My dad didn't have a lot of seniority, so he got laid off. And then they moved to Delta, but I did not want to leave my school, so I drove back and forth. I think it was like 20 miles each way, and finished school. And my sister and I finished school in Hotchkiss, and then my younger sister, the younger of my two sisters, she went to school in Delta, and then my brother's in Delta as well. And then I graduated from high school. 2 weeks later, I was in college. My best friend had enlisted in the Air Force. I'm sorry, not the Air Force, the Navy. And I decided I actually got a full ride scholarship to Fort Lewis College to be a bilingual educator, elementary, at the elementary level. And I found out that I didn't really like my major.
Oh, really? Yeah.
I don't think I would have been a good educator. And I had always had the dream to be in the Air Force anyway, from the first time I saw an Air Force commercial on TV after we moved here. And the person the director that awarded me my
Scholarship.
My scholarship, thank you. She had left the program, so they got a new director, and she had let more people in to the program, but didn't secure additional funding. So what she ended up doing was she ended up cutting everybody's scholarships to allow more people to come in. So I was having to work and go to college, which I guess I was pretty spoiled that I didn't have to work the entire summer that I was in college. But at the beginning of the fall semester, then I was having to work, and I was like, didn't like my major. I was like, well, I'm working and going to school. I said I'm just going to quit and go into the Air Force, which is what I always wanted to do.
So you enlisted. So then, how soon after you enlisted did you take off then for basic training?
So I enlisted, I believe it was in May or June of that year.
And that was, just for reference, what year was that?
86.
86, okay.
And so I went under the delayed enlistment program because I didn't have any openings. And I went in open general, actually. That's how badly I wanted to be in the Air Force. And I ended up, in August 28th is the day that I left to go to basic training. And my parents at that time were living in Newcastle, Colorado. And so I flew out of the airport in Aspen. And it was kind of a weird day because I was before I was just going to college. I was only a few hours away.
Yeah.
This time I was going all the way to Texas.
Yeah. Oh, what? Right.
And so it was kind of weird.
Were they at the airport to see you off?
Yeah, my parents and we were all there at the airport and stuff, and it was just kind of a weird day.
Oh, sure.
Just knowing that I was going to be gone, and I went to basic training.
But we need to back up too. I mean, talking earlier before we got on film, you said that was your very first. You're going into the Air Force, but that was your very first airplane ride, right?
It was.
Yeah.
It was. So when I tell people the story, sometimes they think that, and even when I tell people that I was in the Air Force, they think, "Oh, did you fly?" Or they assume right away that I flew.
Yeah.
And I really didn't think that I didn't have aspirations to fly. I just liked airplanes. I remember before we came to the United States, my aunt had gone, an uncle had gone to, this is my mom's sister, had gone to Mexico to visit, and they had taken some toys to us, because like I said, we were pretty, very poor. And so, and it was, the toy that they took was an airplane, and it was on some strings, and then you pull the strings apart and the airplane would fly back and forth depending on, you know, how the distance, how hard you pulled on the strings and stuff. So, so when we came here and I saw the first, commercial for the Air Force, I just knew I was going to go in the Air Force, or at least that was my dream, to go into the Air Force. So that was my first time. So actually, that was my second time flying from the airport. So the first time that I flew was when I went from Grand Junction to go to Denver to go to the MEPS processing station for my physical and all that stuff.
Now, MEPS for civilians stands for?
Military Entrance Processing Center.
Okay.
Or MEPs. I don't remember what the S stands for.
But the general idea,
And so, that was the first time I flew. And the second time I flew was from Aspen Airport to, I believe, Dallas. No, to San Antonio,
Okay. And that's where you took your basic?
That's where I went for basic training.
And how was that? You said you were this carefree civilian going into the military. How was that adjustment? How was basic training? What was basic training like? And how was that adjustment from civilian life into military life for you?
It wasn't a difficult one. I've always been pretty structured in what I do. When I was in high school, I decided to try out for band, and I remember it was my freshman year that I tried out. I tried out before, and I didn't like the instrument that I was playing. So this was in Olathe. And then I decided in high school, I decided to try out again. So I went to the band director at the time, and he, when he found out that I wanted to be a drummer, he said, "No, absolutely not." He said, "I've got way too many drummers." I guess a lot of kids wanted to be drummers. And so I said, "Okay, whatever." So my sophomore year, the marching band, they had a new band director, and the marching band took state, and I was like, okay, now I know I would need to join band. And so I went to the new band director, Kathy Joseph, and I told her I wanted to join the band, and she said, "Great, what instrument do you play?" I said, "I want to be a drummer." Her eyes rolled in the back of her head, and drummers did not have a good reputation at Hotchkiss High School back then. She said, "You can play band under one condition. You're going to learn to play all the instruments, and you're going to learn to read music." And I was like, okay. Didn't know any better. I thought that's what I was in there for. Apparently the drummers, they didn't like to play, they only liked to play the quads or, the drums. They didn't want to play any of the other instruments. So she made me come in early and stay after school so that I could learn to read music.
Wow.
My junior year, I ended up being first chair because I was the one that I could play all the instruments, and I could actually read the music. And then so that made a lot of the drummers a little bit upset because, they'd been in band for years. And then my junior year, I was one of the two drum majors. So we got to march around, and I love to march. So getting back to your question, basic training, we marched everywhere, and I was in heaven, just marching everywhere, because I love the cadence. I love the only thing that I did that was a real shock to me was I lost my hair.
Oh, right. Oh, sure. Yeah.
So back in the 80s, I parted my hair down the middle, feathered it back. You probably remember, Don Johnson and all the movie stars had feathered hair. All the women had everybody had feathered hair. I had long hair, not really long, but it was long enough where it covered my ears. And then
So you got the base, you got there, the quick shave, did you see?
That's as short as my hair had ever been, and yeah. That, I didn't like that at all. But, you know, everybody had their hair shaved, so everybody was equal. So, as far as the structure, I like the structure because, you know, I'm a type A person. I remember my brother and I, he was born on my 5th birthday. He and I shared a room, and then my youngest brother, he was born when I was 12 years old, I think. And my side of the room, we used to have sides.
Yeah, yeah.
It was, you know, my side of the room was always spotless, and his side of the room, of course, he was 5 years younger than me too, but his side of the room was always kind of messy and stuff, and I kind of made it, you know, this is my room, not my side, don't touch anything. So, but, you know, it was good.
And the physical aspect of basic was fine. I mean, I imagine, coming from a hardworking family, it probably wasn't that hard either, I would imagine.
And, you know, my brother always teased that you know, because he joined the Army, the one that's 5 years younger. He joined the Army, and when we would talk, he would always say, "Don't tell people you're in the military." He said, "You're not in the military." So, and basic training wasn't that difficult. You know, I was really skinny. I think I weighed 119 pounds when I graduated from high school, or when I joined the Air Force. So I was really, really skinny. I didn't have a lot of upper body strength, and that's probably, now, the uniforms, I like the Marines uniforms best, but I couldn't do a pull-up to save my life, and, you know, I could do just enough push-ups to pass the entrance, the physical fitness test for the Air Force. So that's why I didn't probably go into any other services, but I like the Air Force anyway. Mm-hmm. So I always told my brother, look, you like the outdoors, you like, you know, all that physical activity. I'm like, I like working indoors, so, you know, say what you want. You like what you like, I like what I like.
And how was it, you said, you know, it was strange seeing your family seeing you off. Once you got down there and through basic, was there any tinge of homesickness at all, or how was that adjustment for you?
There was a little bit of homesickness, I think, but, you know, I mean, we were so busy all the time. As soon as I graduated so my flight, it's so funny, my flight, we set the record for a flight or at least that's what I was told by our TI. It's funny because my TI was a female TI. We were in a co-ed dorm. The women were on one side of the building, the men were on the opposite side of the building. But you could look across, because it was a big square, and in the middle it was a courtyard. You could look across and see the women in their dormitory. And my TI was a female, and she was Hispanic, and she couldn't pronounce my last name.
Really?
So I was a little bit offended by that. But I think that might have been psychological, you know, she didn't.
Okay.
So a little bit of psyops on her.
Sure.
On her end. But she was really upset because our flight, we had the most demerits going into the inspection, you know, to the final week, that any flight had ever had in the squadron. So, and I don't know how that happened. We just, when it came to it, we didn't seem to be a very cohesive unit when it came time to get ready for our inspections. But other than that, it was a pretty good, you know, a lot of hurry up and wait. So, you know, you'd march somewhere and you'd have to wait around, so you're reading, you know, because you were going to be tested on all the material that you were learning. But I didn't really get too homesick. I had already been away to college, you know, so I did miss calling home. Because at college I was always calling home, at least once a week.
And you weren't given that during basic. You weren't allowed to, or just didn't have the.
Well, you know, it was only during certain times. We did write.
Oh, okay.
You know, so.
Yeah. And this is before cell phones and computers, where you could just shoot off an email.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So you finished basic, and then from there on. Now, where did you go from there? And did you were you allowed to say, "Oh, I want to specialize in this," or did you test for it, or what took you to the next step, I guess?
So before I went to basic training, I came in open general, which means I could have been anything: a cook, a plumber, air traffic mechanic. I think when I took the ASVAB, I did best on the mechanical. So I figured that I would be in a mechanical type job. But what ended up happening is I ended up getting selected for healthcare administration, health services management. And that was really, I really liked that. So the summer before I went to college, I had gone to California to visit one of my aunts, and she was working at Queen of the Valley Hospital in West Covina, California, and she got me a job there for the summer in the business office. She worked in the business office. So I ended up in the records room, and which was great because I always had great attention to detail. So I was always finding misfiled folders, medical folders and stuff, and so I kind of impressed a lot of the ladies, and the ladies loved me in there because I was always, fixing things. And so when I think it was basic training was 6 weeks. I think it was the 4th or 5th week. They told us what we were going to be doing, or where we were going to be going for tech school. And I found out that I was going to be going to Shepherd Air Force Base for healthcare administration. Health services management is what it's called. And so, yeah, as soon as we graduated from tech school, the next day we shipped off, or it might have been the same day, got on a bus and went to Shepherd Air Force Base. And I really enjoyed tech school because, again, we had more freedom, but we were marching everywhere. So the marching, you'll notice a theme there.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
With me with the marching. I didn't want to wash out. When we got there, we were told that people, it wasn't a really high washout, but there was, we had to learn anatomy and physiology and stuff like that. So I was afraid that I wasn't a great student in school, in high school. I was actually very, very shy in high school. My band teacher is the one who really brought me out of my shell, because she pushed me, and she's the one who suggested that I try out for drum major, which, I never would have done.
Yeah.
What I loved about being a drum major is that I got to march the band around. I wasn't just marching with the band, I was marching them around.
Wow. Yeah.
So I really liked that.
Yeah.
And in tech school, in college, I wasn't, I was a B, maybe C, maybe B student. I just wasn't putting a lot of effort. But when I got to the Air Force, I didn't want to fail. So I tried really, really hard to not fail. And I just studied a lot. And to my astonishment, I ended up being honor graduate of my flight. So I didn't know that until so right after tech school, this was, tech school was October to December. I think that just before Christmas is when I graduated from tech school. I decided to take leave and go home for Christmas. And so I went for a couple of weeks, spent Christmas with my family, and then on the 28th, I believe it was, of December, I flew to my first duty station with my orders and everything, and that was I'm glad that I got to spend Christmas with my parents with my family before I got to my first duty station, because then it was I didn't come home that often after that.
Right, and prior to that, doesn't sound like you'd been home since before basic, right? Was that you didn't have a leave between basic and your tech school, did you?
No.
Yeah.
I went straight to tech school.
Yeah. Yeah. So what was your first duty station in?
Little Rock Air Force Base,
Okay.
Arkansas.
Okay.
Yeah, Jacksonville, Arkansas. So that was my first duty station. That was kind of a shock. I'd never been in the South.
Yeah, right.
The part of Chihuahua is a really dry state. There's parts of Chihuahua that are very similar to Colorado, you know, mountainous, but it's pretty arid. It's a pretty arid state, and so I'd never been in humid weather, until I got to basic training. But knowing that I was going to be there, you know, basic training, I knew I was only going to be there for 6 weeks. Shepherd Air Force Base. Shepherd was humid, but it was cold then, which was even that was bad too, because you know that cold just goes right through you.
Yeah.
But when I got to my first duty station, I remember looking around, and all the trees had leaves on them still, and I was like, okay, this is really different. The funniest thing that happened was about a month after I'd gotten there, Arkansas had this huge snowstorm. They had about a foot of snowfall. It crippled the state for about 2 weeks. People just weren't getting around. We didn't get to work we got off work for about a week on base. They just don't have the snow plows to clear it up. And so for the first few months I was walking. I lived about a quarter of a mile from the hospital. The dormitory was about a quarter of a mile. And so I just really didn't like walking in the humid weather, and I just didn't like humid weather. And I still don't to this day. People always tell me, oh, you'll get used to the humidity, and I never could. But it was a great duty station. I was there 6.5 years.
6.5?
6.5. I kept filling out my dream sheet. I wanted to go overseas, and I never got selected.
Wow.
And then I got handpicked to go to the Air Force Academy and go to the hospital there. And so, yeah, it was really, really cool. That was the best assignment I had by far.
Yeah, yeah. So your primary duties were record management. I mean, talk a little bit about what your duties would be.
So healthcare administration, there's a lot of jobs that you can have. My first job was in the records room. I was in the records room. I enjoyed it because it just, you know, I like attention to detail, and like I said, I was always finding missed files. And I kind of liked fixing things.
Yeah.
The next job I had was aeromedical evacuation technician. That was a really cool job. So it was a small hospital, and while I was there, they had inpatient services at the hospital. The flight surgeons would fly patients that they could not treat in the hospital. They would schedule them to be seen at major medical centers across the country, military, Travis Air Force Base, Keesler Air Force Base, Fort Sam Houston Medical Center, Lackland Hospital at Lackland, Scott Air Force Base, just any of the major medical centers. So my job was to coordinate with the flight surgeon and call in the DC-10, the air ambulance.
Oh, wow.
And so that was a cool job, being able to do that. Just, you know, of course, it wasn't me calling, you know, but the flight surgeon's the one who signed the documents and who authorized it. But I'm the one who got to call the command center and coordinate everything. So to me that was really cool.
Yeah.
And then I had to check the luggage of the patients for contraband, and ride in the ambulance to the flight line and go up to the inside the plane and talk to the flight nurse, and it was a cool job for a 20-year-old, you know, airman first class. That was the best job that I had in the Air Force, but the Air Force Academy was my most enjoyable. It was the best duty station.
Okay.
So the third job, that was my second job. Then I went to work in the orderly room. And from the orderly room, I was asked to go into medical information systems. In the orderly room, I had I have a little bit of a technical mind. The Air Force decided to put in a new system for the orderly rooms for the hospital. I don't know if it was base wide, but in the hospital they put in a new system, so everybody got a dummy terminal. So before we had daisy wheels and daisy wheel print typewriters, and so we used to do everything on the typewriter. And when they got the new system in, nobody knew how to use it. And so I ended up figuring out, so before that, right before that, I was creating templates on the daisy wheel typewriters so that when we fed a form in, we could type everything, all the information, and then hit the enter button, and then it would feed the form, the pre-printed form, and fill in all the fields that needed to be filled. So I kind of...
You developed that?
I created templates for the
Really?
orderly room people to do that. So we wouldn't have to, do it, take each form and type in everything as you were filling out the form. It just did it all. You just type everything, and then it would go and fill out the form. Okay. So from there, they asked me to go to information systems, and that's when we got the new systems that came in. So nobody knew how to use them. So what I did was I ended up writing the how-to manuals for that, and we published them and gave everybody a copy so that they knew, okay, if you're going to do this, here's the steps to do it. And so from there, that's evidently that's how the Air Force Academy heard about me, and they asked me to come and run their medical information. Medical information. That was the NCOIC of medical information systems. That was a cool job too. One time, I accidentally deleted everything on the computer.
Oh no!
I went to do something and I accidentally formatted the disk. Fortunately, we had a backup, and I learned how to do that thing again. I was so nervous that I was going to lose my job, but no, it worked out. And then from there, I started to learn to use databases. And so in healthcare, in the health services administration, there's a lot of different jobs that you can do. One of the jobs that I did was when people died so we used to call it death call. If somebody died on the unit, then we would go and we would talk with the next of kin. We would print out the death certificate and have the doctor on duty sign it. And unfortunately, every time that I was on call, somebody died. So
That sounds like a tough job. I can't imagine. Yeah.
Yeah, especially some of the. Yeah, well, it's always hard when somebody dies, but
Sure.
Especially when they die young.
Yeah.
And stuff. But
Yeah.
we didn't have a lot of deaths. I wasn't on call a lot during that time. But it was just very. It was hard. That was a difficult job to do. Worked on the command post. So a lot of different jobs. So the healthcare administration, basically anything that's administrative in a hospital or clinic setting, that's what we would do.
Well, it sounds like you got a pretty well-rounded variety of jobs within that.
Yes.
Yeah. And so you served, where were your various stations? And you served in Arkansas, Colorado Springs.
So after I had been in at the academy for some time, I decided I was going to go into the reserves. And so I think it was 2007, I left active duty and I went into the reserves. In 2001, was it? Yes, 2001, I got a call from the Air Reserve Personnel Center. They were looking I was living in Colorado Springs at the time, so I stayed in Colorado Springs after, but I was a reservist. So I was still working at the hospital. I was just working there you know, 2 weeks of the year.
Okay, right.
And, you know, doing my reserve duty at the hospital. But I was doing you know, I had a civilian job. And so I got a call from the Air Reserve Personnel Center, and they wanted me to come in and help out. They're on the medical administration side, and so I said, okay, why not? I'll do it. And so I went in, and this was in April of 2001, and so they kept me on, and it was around 9/11 that I decided to go ahead and go full time into the active guard.
So you went back into active duty?
Active guard and reserve.
Oh.
And then 9/11 hit and stuff, and so I stayed at the Air Reserve Personnel Center until 2006. In 2006, they decided to move our operations from Denver to Robins Air Force Base in Georgia, and at that point, nobody in my unit. So I had 4 civilians and I had 4 military. I had 8 personnel in my unit that I oversaw. Nobody wanted to go, so I was the only one that went. They moved me. They PCSed me to Georgia, and we started to downsize the staff in Denver as we were growing the staff in Georgia, and eventually we had replaced everybody in Denver. And then I was there for 3 years and retired. 3 years in 2009.
So you got your 20...
I got my 20 years of active duty. Yes.
Okay, all right.
And retired.
Wow.
Yeah. So.
And then let's jump into civilian life. Then, so obviously you stayed in the health industry.
I did.
Yeah.
So when I was on active duty, and this was just before I moved to Georgia. I had started. I went back to school to get my bachelor's degree, and I finished my bachelor's degree in 2008, I believe. Yes, in 2008, and I was already so it was online. It was at the University of Phoenix, which is a really good school. And so I got my degree in healthcare administration. And since I was already in school mode, I decided I was going to go ahead and continue on and enroll in a master's program. And so I retired from the Air Force. I continued to, but I continued to get to go to school because it was still online. I didn't have to be, in Arkansas or Georgia or wherever, I didn't have to be physically out of school. And so when I retired, that was in 2009. In early 2010, I got a job at a ambulance service out of Denver, AMR, American Medical Response. I don't know if you've ever heard of them. They have ambulances all over the country. And I lasted in that job approximately 6 months, and then I was having to drive down to Denver every day, so that was not fun at all. I left that job in July, and in November is when I got hired on with Banner Health. I got hired on because of my skills to build databases. So when I was still at the Air Force Academy, I had dabbled a little bit with databases. It was Microsoft Access back then. And so when I went to the Air Force, to the Air Reserve Personnel Center, I went in and they had me build a couple of databases. And so I started building databases, and I built several of them.
I see that theme throughout your career. Did you go off for training, or was this all kind of self-taught stuff? Or a combination?
At first it was self-taught, but then I went to training for it. I've always been really inquisitive. When I was young, I used to take toys and stereos and things apart because I needed to see how they worked. Of course, nowadays, everything's, electronics, so you don't, there's no moving parts.
Yeah, right, yeah.
It's no fun anymore. Back that's why I had a mechanical mind, because I would always, most of the time I could put things back together just the way I, just the way I found them. Most of the time.
Yeah.
And then I dabbled with, cars and stuff, rebuilding carburetors and that kind of stuff. So I had built several databases, so I had that in my repertoire. When I applied for this job with Banner Health, they were looking for somebody specifically to be able to to build databases. So they brought me in, they called it the recon team, which I thought was really cool, because recon, to me, being in the Air Force meant reconnaissance.
Yeah.
And so, but no, what they meant was reconciliation is what that stood for. So when I was interviewing, they said, well, you would be part of the recon team if you get selected. And I was like, recon? It's like, so that was really funny, because then I didn't ask, because I didn't want to, it sounds stupid.
Yeah.
But, because I knew it wasn't reconnaissance. But, so I built a database. So what the way the work was being done before was they had all these systems that they were pulling data from, and in order to do their jobs, they had to go to this system and pull this data here, and then another piece of data was on this system, and another piece was in a third system, or there were several systems. So what I did was I combined all the systems and pulled the data from all of them that we needed, and I downloaded every day. I would or every week actually, download the data every week into our database, and then I would display all the fields that were needed on one page. So everything was there for them to be able to look. So it cut the amount of work that we had to do drastically. So, and then they asked me to build another database not build another database. I did build another database, but that was a different database. So they asked me to go ahead and share that database with everybody in the building. There were 100 employees. So my team was 3 of us on my team that used this database. But when people started hearing about what it did, they said, oh, we can use that over here, or we can use it over there. So I ended up expanding the database and putting fields for other sections in the building. So then we ended up rolling the database out to everybody in the building, and then I wrote the how-to manuals for that as well. So that was a lot of fun.
Oh yeah.
But my passion had always been, I loved the data aspect of it, but I always liked managing. I liked being in the clinical setting, and so I applied for and was finally selected to be the supervisor at the cancer center. Banner had 2 cancer centers, so I was going between 2 cancer centers as a supervisor. And then my immediate supervisor, he was over the gastroenterology clinic and the cancer center. So there was something going on in the gastroenterology clinic, and they needed somebody to go in and fix some things. So they hired me to go ahead and fix some things in the clinic. And so I was in the clinic for a couple of years, and then I realized then that I had a lot of money, Montgomery GI Bill funds, that I was going to use or lose if I didn't use them by 2019. So I already had a master's degree. I didn't want to get another master's. So I decided to enroll in a doctorate program.
Really? Wow.
And I left Banner Health, and I thought, okay, I'm going to go get another job, where I can just, because at Banner Health as a practice administrator, I was working, I'd be there at 6 o'clock in the morning, leave, come home, eat, and then come home and open up my computer and work till late at night. So I was working about 60 hours a week. And so I decided, either my work's going to suffer or my school's going to suffer, but I can't do both. So I left Banner Health, and I decided I'm going to get a job that's, 4 or whatever. And that way at nights I can go to school. Well, the job ended up being more than 7 to 4, and so I quit that job too. And so I actually ended up Ubering for some time because I just want to have spending money.
Fair enough.
But I completed 3 of 5 chapters in my dissertation, and I started to look ahead to what I was going to do. I knew I didn't want to, with a doctorate degree, you're kind of limited to what you're going to do, academia or the government. And I knew I didn't want to be in academia, and had already been in the government, and I was like, I don't want to go back to being in the government. So I started looking for work, and I came across a company whose insurance products I was pretty impressed by because of the way they do insurance. Having been on the other side of insurance all my life, verifying benefits, filing claims, all that stuff, I knew what that process looked like. And so when I came across this company, they claimed that how they did insurance was different. So I decided to check them out, and I did. And so I came to work, I went and studied for my license, health and life license, and I tested and got, passed my test and went to work for the company. And I was still going to school at this time. And then so I had left Banner. I was going to do my dissertation on an aspect of the clinic that I was working in. What ended up happening was the clinic pretty much disbanded. So so I did chapters 1, 2, and 3, which, it's chapter 4 is you do the actual research, and chapter 5 is you report on the research. So I never got to do the actual research because of my subject was gone. So at that point, it was either start fresh, and do a new topic, and go chapters 1, 2, and 3, or find another clinic. So as of today, I haven't finished my doctorate degree. I don't know if I ever will, but
yeah. Wow.
So I've been. So in 2018, I decided to set up my own company. And so in 2016, right after I had started, I went to school full time. I decided I needed an income source, so I started my own vending company. And I actually kind of started it for my sons, because I started it before I left the second job that I had. And they didn't want anything to do with it, so I was stuck with it. I should have asked them first. So I had I started my second business with insurance. I became self-employed, 1099 employee, and in 2019, my tax person said, "Look, you can't have all your commissions going to your personal account." I didn't know any better. He says, "You have to set up an LLC." And so I was like, well, if I have to set up an LLC, I'm just going to start my own company. So I did. I set up an LLC and branded my insurance services under my own name. And so yes, I've been self-employed since 2018, basically. Well, since 2016, really, if you think of my previous job. But and then earlier this year, I was approached by a friend and asked me out to dinner, and a couple of friends, and they pitched the idea of me for running for U.S. Congress.
Oh, really?
So I'm now a candidate for Colorado's 8th Congressional District.
Oh, very good.
We just launched my campaign on Veterans Day last month, November 11th.
Oh, very good.
So,
congratulations.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, wow.
So it's been quite a ride.
Well, and it's really, I mean, you go all the way back to your family. I mean, a very poor family migrating. I mean, what you've accomplished in your life. It's a great storyline. I mean, your parents must be extremely proud of you and what you and your siblings have accomplished. I mean, your father sounds like a very hardworking man. That it was instilled in you, and Yeah.
Yeah, and my parents, both of them very hardworking. I remember being very young, and mom and dad were working, and I'm the oldest of five, so I learned to cook at a very young age. I love to cook.
Do you? Yeah.
I do. I cook in my household. So and that's because I love to cook.
Yeah.
I don't like doing dishes though. I would spend more time in the kitchen if I didn't have to wash dishes.
Yeah, right.
But no, my parents, it's only in America can you come from a situation that I came from, where you can, even if you're just if you grow up here, if you're born here, only here can you accomplish the things that people are able to accomplish. I mean, you look at billionaires, that never went to, never finished college or never went to college. It's just, started very, very poor, and you wouldn't think that they'd be able to do those kinds of things that they.
Yeah.
I feel very, very blessed for sure. That having been able to come here, not speak any English, to now everything all the jobs that I've had, the blessings, the opportunities, it's just tremendous.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Well, let's shift gears a little bit and talk about family. How you met your wife. You mentioned sons.
So,
talk a little bit about your family, if you like.
So I'm not married to my son's mother anymore. We divorced several years ago. But the way we met is my sister went to Mexico to get married, because the groom's family was from Mexico. So we all went down there because they weren't able to come up here. So we all went down there, and that's where I met the mother of my children. I have two sons, grown sons. One of them is, they both live here in the area. One of them is 30, 91, so 32, and the other one's 30. The oldest, he restores hardwood floors. The youngest is a electrician apprentice. And so I have 3 grandkids,
Oh, wow.
2 granddaughters and a grandson. My oldest son, he met this girl, they got married, had my granddaughter, and then they got divorced, and then he found another, he met this other girl, and she already had 2 kids, so they're a blended family, but they're still our grandkids.
Sure.
We claim them as our own. And yeah, so the mother of my kids, we're friends. We celebrate holidays together and birthdays together. So
Very cool.
so it's very nice.
Yeah, good. Well, Joe, as we start to wind down this interview, is there anything I didn't ask you that you wanted to talk about, or any other stories as we've been sitting here that have kind of floated to the top that you wanted to talk about? I know we probably only got the tip of the iceberg of your story, or do you think we caught everything and we pretty much caught a well-rounded version of your story?
No, I think I think we got it pretty well rounded.
Okay.
A lot of
Okay.
from beginning all the way to now. So.
And the question I always like to ask in these interviews, as you look back on your Air Force career, how did that change your life, affect your life, play a role in your life at all, or was it just simply one of the many chapters in your life? How do you answer that, do you think?
I think it was just one of many chapters. The values that my parents instilled in me. When I got stationed at the Air Force Academy, one of the times that I think probably the first time that I went to the cadet area, because at the academy you have the cadet area and then you have everybody else, all the support, everybody else who's there to support the cadets. The Air Force Cadet motto is integrity first, service before self, and excellence in all you do. And so when I first heard that, it really resonated with me, because it's really what my upbringing upbringing was all about.
Yeah.
The values that I held within, do the right thing, serve others and do the best job that you can. And so that kind of solidified to me the reason why I was in the Air Force and why I was sorry. I get emotional when I...
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Just being able to serve the country. Serve, because I received so much. And, that's part of the reason why I did what I did. And now why I'm running for Congress. To continue to serve.
Yeah, very good, very good.
So,
Well, I think this is a good point to wind down this interview. I want to thank you for sitting down to tell your story today, but I want to thank you for your service to our country.
thank you. I appreciate it very much. So the proudest moment of my life was the day that I became a U.S. citizen, and other than when my two sons were born, those are the proudest. But it was to me it was a great accomplishment to be able to become a U.S. citizen and continue to pledge allegiance to my country.
So this was, what year, this was, you said 89?
89.
Yeah.
December 8th, 1989. And so this is my honor graduate certificate from technical school. And like I said, I was not a very good student, but I wanted to succeed in the Air Force, and so I tried very, very hard, and I was honored to receive the honor graduate certificate when I got to my new duty station, which was a huge surprise to me. I didn't even know I was in the running.
Very cool.
And so this is the certificate that came with the flag that I was presented at my retirement from the Air Force. I was not able to deploy because of a couple of medical conditions that rendered me ineligible to deploy, but I was able to support those who were deployed to the desert during Iraqi freedom and after 9/11. And so it was just a tremendous honor for me that the men and women of the unit flew the flag in my honor and sent this certificate to me. And it just was wonderful that even though I couldn't deploy, I was part of their deployment mission.
Very, very nice.